I want to take a moment today to talk about the war on drugs. Now, you may ask, why does a gun channel like mine want to talk about the war on drugs? Well, it's pretty simple. Every day I get asked by people, how can I present a positive and convincing argument for the pro-gun movement? And I've always said, well, one of the best ways to present a positive argument for the pro-gun movement is to discredit the anti-gun movement. And one of the easiest ways to discredit their actual basis and their motivation for their argument is the war on drugs. If these people really want to do something about violence, they really want to do something about murder, if they really want to do something about gun violence, they would realize that one of the biggest culprits in gun violence is the war on drugs. It's the problems that this war caused. All these Puritan crusades, these pious laws, these morality laws, all they ever do is cause problems. I mean, they're only sponsored by two groups of people. Like I say, they're sponsored by the pious people who think they know best for you, who want to force this stuff down your throat, and they're sponsored by the people who benefit from the corporate prison system or from other government systems that make money off the war on drugs. The group that profits the most off the war on drugs is the prison system, the corporate prison system. Now, I mean, if you're going to run a prison and you've got a choice, do you want 500 murderers that you're going to have armed guards on at all times and are going to sap a lot of your resources, or do you want 500 guys who got caught with a joint who aren't going to give you any trouble and aren't really going to require all that much work? Well, of course, you're going to choose the 500 guys who smoked a joint. So, they benefit greatly from this system. So they shove all their money behind the small, pious minority who wants to enforce these laws. They make their voice louder, make it sound like that they are a bigger group than they are, and make it sound like this is a big problem. They ignore reality and try to create a problem that doesn't exist so that they can profit off the cure. So that's really the big problem right here. And if people really wanted to stop crime and violence in this country, they would realize that and they would deal with reality. They wouldn't be trying to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. They would try to stop the things that are causing the gun violence in the inner cities. So let's face it, that's where the vast majority of gun crime occurs. It occurs in high populous, low-income areas. That is where most of it happens. And the war on drugs is just making that problem worse. Because let's face it, what is the war on drugs? It's basically just modern-day prohibition. Prohibition did one thing and one thing only. It established a foothold for organized crime in this country. That's all it did. And that's all the war on drugs is doing, except it's creating a giant drug cartel in Mexico that has guns and money. Not only do they have guns to back up threats, but they have money to influence people. So we have created this illegal organization that has more money and power than the government that they reside in, of the state that they reside in, of the country they reside in. So that's one thing the war on drugs has done, and that spills over into our country. You have the inner city kids fighting over turf. You have them fighting over who gets to sell what to whom. It becomes drug wars in our own cities, our own streets. That stuff doesn't just stay in Mexico. And that accounts for a lot of our violent crime with handguns. In fact, it accounts for, I would say easily, if you took out suicides and crimes of passion, that's the biggest factor, if not the biggest factor anyway. In fact, if you took out crime caused by the war on drugs, you took out suicides, and you took out crimes of passion, our murder rate would be very small, especially for a country our size. Guns aren't causing the problems. It's these socioeconomic conditions that are set up by these bad policies that are causing the problems. I mean, you can talk to pretty much any education advocate, any social engineer, anyone who knows anything about anything to do with this problem, and they will tell you, if we have started in the 80s spending the money on education and infrastructure that we spend on the war on drugs, which just goes to line the pockets of the corporate interests, we wouldn't have nearly the problems we have today. We would be solving problems at a massive rate if we were spending the money in the right places instead of demonizing guns and putting the money in the wrong pockets. That's the system we want to do right now because it benefits certain people. But if we wanted to do what benefited society as a whole, like I say, we would take this money and spend it on things that matter, like educational opportunities, like infrastructure of inner cities, things like that, things that would matter, things that would actually make a difference. So if you really want to present a positive argument and you really want to counter an anti-gun person, why don't you say to them, if you really cared about stopping crime, if you really cared about the lives of the children, well then you would take care of something that's killing more children than anything. Killing inner city children every day. You would stop this ridiculous war on drugs. You'd get off your ass, you'd stop spending so much time hating an inanimate object, and you would actually put some of that effort towards doing something that would really matter. You ain't even my real dad.